Okay, it's 1 o'clock. This is Dr. Steve Young, Superintendent of the Berlin Central School District. I want to welcome everyone to the third and final Berlin Town Hall regarding the reopening of our schools in a few weeks. Today, you're going to be presenting or be presented with a webinar identifying our main areas of reopening. Included at the bottom, there is a question and answer area. Click on that if you have a question. We'll try to immediately get an answer to your question. If not, there is a web page that will direct you to that have many questions that were asked and answered over the last couple of webinars. Again, thank you for coming. And as soon as we're ready, it looks like we have about 21 participants. So let's get started. Mr. Fred Hutchinson will be driving the screen for us today. So if he could move to the next slide, we'll get started. Thank you. So this is this presentation will be available on the district website. We hope to get it up tomorrow as the third recorded webinar. The purpose, again, is to review the plan that we did submit and which was approved by the Department of Health and the New York State Education Department. It is the third of the planned virtual meetings that were required under Andrew Cuomo's order. And we also held 2 previous meetings, so those are complete. We'd like to have the parents and community bear with us as we move through this pandemic and we reopen our schools. And it was with their help and collaboration that we were able to do the plan and put it together. The teachers, the administrators, parents, Department of Health, and other areas, other governmental areas did participate in the production and reopening of our plan. Next. So, we were very concerned with the health and safety being first and foremost. That's our top priority for the reopening plan and for getting our students back into the schools in a safe manner. So that, of course, continues to be our priority and will always be in our minds when we move forward in the next few months. We also wanted to ensure that we could provide learning experiences, the best learning experiences for all of our students. We do have a wide range of abilities of students, and we had to take that into consideration. So we did have a plan that was put forward that did take into consideration the various social and emotional needs of our staff and our students, as well as individual students that require special services. So we did put together a plan that encompassed many areas of student learning abilities, and you'll see that today. Again, social emotional wellness of staff and students was essential in the plan, and we do have opportunities if there is a need for a very specific social and emotional well-being question. We do have staff that will be able to answer questions in that area as well. We did follow all of the guidelines that were provided at the time for Center for Disease Control and the New York State Department of Health. We constantly get updates on a daily basis from CDC and DOH, and we do change the plan according to what their recommendations are. So there might be a change between now and September 10th when students do come back to school. Again, collaboration, communication, and coordination with all the stakeholders is extremely important and has been and will continue to be a determining factor in the success of our school district as we go through this together. Next. So we would like everybody to understand that it's been a long process, and we do require a lot of the community to come together and fully understand what we are required to do under certain New York State mandates. And of course, that would be wearing the face coverings in public. That's in our guidance, and we do expect teachers, staff, administrators, students to wear those face masks when they're within our school buildings and on public transportation, especially on the buses coming in the morning and going home in the afternoon. We will enforce this commitment, and we are going to the best of our ability, follow those DOH and CDC guidance and guidelines regarding social distancing as well. Of course, social distancing right now is at a 6-foot requirement in public places. It's at a 12-foot requirement in certain situations, such as music classes and physical education classes. So we will be applying those guidelines as well, very specifically for some of the courses that we do offer. And we will adopt any measure that will ensure the wellness of our staff and students. We will adapt to the changing data as it comes in, particularly with the number of students that come back to school. That is due tomorrow by our parents, whether or not they're going to opt for remote learning, fully remote learning, or the hybrid plan, which we are offering. We will also adjust those processes, our programs, our protocols, whenever it's necessary to ensure the best conditions possible for our learners and all of our employees. So how did we develop the plan? Over the summer and at the end of last year, we had to put together a committee. There were 58 individual participants on that committee. The committee was divided into 6 subcommittees, depending on the expertise of the participants, as well as the areas that needed further exploration for reopening of schools. So we did subdivide into the teaching and learning component, the social emotional wellness component, the financial, the food and transportation component, special programs for students that not only have individualized education plans, but also those with 504s, those with accommodations, and those other special programs that we offer, such as school within a school. Also, the Health and Safety Committee was extremely helpful. Our committee was headed up or co-chaired by our school nurse and our director of maintenance and operations or facilities, and they have put together an excellent plan as we go forward. And finally, the communications component was the final subcommittee, and they are responsible for distributing and putting together all the communications that we do have going out and on our website. These 6 subcommittees were spearheaded by a chair, or what we call a facilitator. Those facilitators met with those committees at least once weekly, sometimes 2 and 3 times weekly, depending on the particular subcommittee. On Thursdays, on Thursdays, those facilitators came together and basically explained what was going on in each of the committees on a weekly basis, made their recommendations to the facilitation committee, and it was the facilitation committee that put together the final document, which was eventually uploaded and approved by the Department of Health and the Department of Education. Next. We were under some tight guidelines, some tight dates that had to occur for the development of this plan. We found out basically in July, middle of July, when the guidance was finally released from the New York State Education Department. We did meet prior to that July 16th deadline or date that was where the guidance was released, and we did put together what we thought was part of the plan and what we anticipated being part of the plan. So on July 29th, we released the summary document that was created for the parents and the staff, and we did communicate that summary document. If you recall, it was a short few page or a couple of pages that outlined what was going to be taking place in the actual reopening plan itself. We did put that out via Facebook, through our website, and we sent it via email through our school student system. We also had a deadline of July 30th to put the plan in place and submit it to the New York State Education Department. Again, on that day, it was submitted, and we communicated the exact plan to parents via Facebook, the website, and email, and it was approved shortly thereafter. On August 4th, the following week, we sent out a parent survey, and that survey really was to get an idea of how many individual students would be returning to school versus remote instruction, and how many would be riding the bus versus coming into school with their own transportation. And in a minute, you'll see that those results. On August 14th, as requested by the governor, on August 7th, we had to inform the public and create 3 additional documents or plans or sub-plans that was very specific to testing, contact tracing, and the remote learning plan itself. We did have, and we do have, a COVID-19 school reopening resource page. I think we can take you to that very quickly, or maybe right after this slide. Oh, no, here we go. Maybe we could go now. So if you click on that link, it will take you to our website where we have our reopening plan. It's our resource page. As you can see, everything is uploaded under the links and resources. I mentioned earlier, we did have those new plans. We have teaching and learning updates. We have contact tracing information. We have the plan itself. It's very detailed. If you click on each one of those PDFs, it'll open up to the actual plans themselves. So please make sure that you get a chance to look at that. This will be our main place for resources, staff resources as well as parent resources. And of course, this presentation will be there as well for those who may have missed it. So thank you very much for that. Let's go back to the next slide. Okay, so we do have, well, can you go back? I think there's 2 other slides that might be before this, or maybe not. Okay, I'll start with the Wi-Fi.
I think when we updated the data, Dr. Young, it just reconfigured the order.
Okay, fine. So, of course, remote learning doesn't take place in a vacuum. We have to have an internet connection in the student's home. So we did ask, and we got a very good response rate, 623 responses out of about 661 students. And about 82% of those responded that they can fully participate regardless of other members using the internet at the same time. So we were very encouraged by that. Another 15% are still able to access the internet through partial use. In other words, they have to be limited to certain times. The family would limit each student to perhaps a certain hour or 2 hours, but they still have it available to them. We didn't have a lot of students that could not fully participate, and we had even fewer that do not have the internet access at home. Next. Next slide, please. Okay. So transportation and scheduling was extremely challenging, still is. So we did ask a question about whether or not you intend to send your child back to campus, to school, for the in-person live instruction. Right now, we have about 70% of our students coming back to be in our classrooms, which is a very positive sign. That's where kids need to be at this time. Get them back into the routine of learning and getting back into the routine of our teachers teaching in a bricks and mortar condition. So we have a good number there. We do have 27% of the students that will opt or have opted at this point for remote-only instruction. And that will be further explained a little later on by some of the other administrators. I did forget to mention that we do have all of the administrators in the webinar as panelists, and they will be responding to other slides as we go forward. Next slide. So transportation, again, another issue. We have about 57% of our students coming back on the buses, whereas another 43% will come in through their own transportation. And I think with that number, it actually is a little bit in our favor, because now we could socially distance the students as recommended on the buses. And of course, you know, when those students do come on the buses, they will be wearing face masks. And we will have one student per seat, as is recommended. So only on, I think, on the larger buses, we'll probably only have at maximum 22 students, and some of the smaller buses even less than that. So we are working with our transportation department to do the final routing system, and that will be available later on in a couple, certainly before school starts. But we will have all of those bus runs planned and ready to go in a couple of weeks. So I think this now leads into the, go ahead, that's all right, the on-campus instruction, which will be taken over first by Casey Kent at the elementary school, and then by Jody Sullivan for the middle school, high school. So thank you very much, and the rest I'll come back later at the end of the slides.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Tracy Kent, the principal at Berlin Elementary School. At the elementary school, we will be offering two different learning options for families. The first is in-person instruction. Students will physically be attending the school building 4 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. Those will be regular full days of school. We have not changed the start and end times of our day. For those in-person students, Wednesdays will serve as a remote learning day for those students. So 4 in-person and 1 remote over the course of the week. The other option that's available for families is the remote only option. So students and families who select this option would have all of their instruction Monday through Friday delivered in a remote manner. For those parents who will be sending their children for in-person, they will, and this does apply to our remote students as well. They will have instruction in the special areas. They will receive instruction in art, music, library, technology, and physical education. As far as physical education goes, we will, weather permitting, hold as many classes outside as possible. But if need be, we will utilize our gym space, and we have cut down the number of students who would be in each of those PE sections so that students have enough socially distanced space to participate in physical education. In-person students will have a 30-minute recess time daily. We've gone outdoors and zoned off different areas in the playground and the surrounding fields so that we can have 3 classes out on the playground at a time, but not mixing those cohorts. Breakfast and lunch will be eaten in classrooms. We've always eaten breakfast in our classrooms here at BES, so that's not really a change. We'll just be adding lunch to that. And again, this is being done to minimize transitions for our students throughout the building. The remote only instruction may be delivered by a team of teachers, including collaborating teachers from Questar or other local school districts. This next slide shows a couple of photos of actual classrooms here at BES for you to see how our custodial staff has been working to prepare the buildings. The slide on the left depicts a classroom that has desks. You'll notice that the desks have been spaced apart from one another, and a large amount of furniture has been removed from classrooms to allow for that spacing. The center picture is one of our kindergarten classrooms, which utilizes tables rather than desks. So again, a lot of furniture has been taken out of classrooms to make sure that we have enough spacing between tables. The photograph to the right shows the actual barriers that have been purchased for Berlin Elementary. Each student will have their own barrier, whether they're sitting at a desk or a table. And while students are seated behind those barriers, that's when they'll be able to remove their masks. If they need to get up and move about the classroom for any reason, as soon as they step away from those barriers, the mask then has to come back on because they wouldn't be behind the barrier or being socially distanced. So masks on when they're not behind that barrier.
Okay, thank you so much. This is Kent, very clear. This is Jody Sullivan, principal of Berlin Middle High School. I'm just going to pick right up by saying that our grade 6 model is very similar to the BES model for K through 5. Our in-person instruction is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. All students are remote on all Wednesdays. For our remote-only instruction option, that will be delivered remotely on all days. We intend to primarily use technology, especially Chromebooks, Schoology at the 6 through 12 level, and Zoom virtual meetings to deliver our remote instruction. Students will have a 30-minute lunch. Breakfast and lunch will be eaten in the classrooms. Depending on student courses or schedules, we're talking about transitions in the hallway right now with clear indicators on the floor for how to maintain 6 feet apart and socially distant when walking in the hallways and having a clear traffic pattern. Some students may be transitioning to different classrooms at times, specifically when certain equipment, materials, or a specific learning environment is necessary to practice skill and to learn the content in those areas, specifically thinking about technology classes, art or music, PE, and science, where certain equipment is necessary. Our remote-only instruction, again, may be delivered by Berlin teachers or collaborating teachers from Questar and or other local school districts. So that is for grade 6 only. This next slide is our most complex model. This is the hybrid model for 7th through 12th grade. The guidance department has been working very hard along with some of our secretarial staff to figure out how many students have answered whether or not they prefer to be in person or remote. And so we're currently working on splitting every grade level into equal cohorts of green and yellow. So in-person instruction will be either your student, if you've chosen this, will be either assigned to the green team or the yellow team. The green team will meet on Mondays and Thursdays. They'll be remote on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The yellow cohort will meet on Tuesdays and Fridays in person on campus, and will be remote on Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Again, Wednesday is an all remote day for all students, regardless of whether they've chosen in person or not. The remote-only instruction will be delivered remotely on all days, again, relying on the majority of our remote instruction will rely on technology. So the use of Chromebooks, Schoology, and the Zoom platform. So it's really important for us to know how your Wi-Fi, how your internet access is, so that we can work with you if there are any anticipated issues there. 7th through 12th grade, again, all students will have a 30-minute lunch. We intend to have breakfast and lunch eaten in classrooms. For the 7th through 12th grade level, sometimes classes are on a rotating schedule. So something like PE or health or library might meet every other day. So if there is a day 1, day 2 rotation, it will go in this way. Monday will be day 1, Tuesday will be day 2, Wednesday will not be designated either day 1 or day 2. Then Thursday will be a day 2 and Friday will be a day 1. The way this works out is mostly for equitability. That way, a green cohort would see their day 1 and their day 2 in person and would have it remotely also, day 1 and day 2 in the same week. It really is just a planning for equitability, and especially in those courses that do rotate. Again, depending on the course or schedule, students may be transitioning to different classrooms at times. This is especially likely to happen in grades 9 through 12. We're working through some of those logistics now, but at those levels, there are different types of equipment in the classrooms that will make it very difficult for the teachers to move. So we do want to make sure that the right equipment, materials, and environment will maximize the learning for our in-person students who are on campus those days. The remote-only instruction may be delivered by Berlin teachers, may be collaborating teachers from Questar 3 or other school districts. If you have seen previous presentations, you'll notice that we tried to maintain like the traditional green and gold colors for the cohort because the G, both colors started with the letter G. The computer system did kick that back. And so if you're confused and wonder where the gold cohort went, it is now, and from now on, going to be called yellow for the purpose of our computer programming and to make sure that we minimize any confusion with that written on the schedule there. I think that is all for me. If you do have questions, here are a couple of examples of what our classrooms look like. In the center, you'll see this was a computer lab. It's currently a Spanish classroom. The chairs have been all separated by 6 feet. Those computers are actually going to be removed because students will have their own Chromebooks that they'll be walking around with instead of the need to share. We will not be sharing those computers. We'll be removing those, so students will have their own Chromebooks. To the right is an example of a small learning environment. This is an example of a reading classroom. There are about 5 desks there. That's about the typical size for a reading classroom to begin with, so very easily socially distanced with 6 feet between the desks. The same is true of the picture all the way to the left. This is an example of a typical classroom. The desks will be all separated. Eventually there'll be markers on the floor to make sure that those desks get put back every time the room is cleaned. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A below or to send them to the school reopening at berlincentral.org.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Fred Hutchinson, Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment. So I'm going to review some of those questions that are more systemic, that are district-wide. So the first thing you should know is that we left Wednesdays as a remote learning day for all students. This will allow us to do several things. First of all, it will allow us the flexibility to respond to the changing data that we get from the Department of Health or CDC or the Governor's Office or the State Education Department. There's a lot, as Dr. Young mentioned earlier, there's a lot that is coming in. We get updates, almost every day from one or all of those outside organizations, and we need flexibility in order to address them. It also will allow us to do professional development for our staff. This is a vastly different approach in many ways to what our staff is used to doing, and we want to be able to provide continually the best instruction that we can for your students. So that means we're going to have to provide professional development in an ongoing fashion throughout the course of the year. It'll allow teams to meet and discuss their plans, their students, and it will allow some flexibility for individualized instruction as needed. So we are, and also additional cleaning will occur on those Wednesdays. But that's why we thought about leaving those Wednesdays as an open day on the campus, because we think we can do better throughout the course of the year by having that time available to us. So we also heard from parents after last spring, and about the platforms that we used. So we have determined that all teachers, grades 4 through 12, will use Schoology as a learning management system. And this will be the main form of communication for students and families and teachers. It will be where we record all of our grades and our assignments. It will offer an opportunity to collaborate with our colleagues across grade levels and in other districts. And it will provide access to online instruction and resources for those students who are learning remotely, either on that Wednesday or that are remote learning program throughout the whole of the week. And all teachers grades K3 will be using Seesaw as a learning management system. This is new to our district. We tested it in some fashion last year, but we believe it will be the best approach for kindergarten through 3rd grade instruction, and that will be used whether the students are remote or on campus. For both Schoology and Seesaw, we will be posting how-to videos for parents and for students on that website that we brought you to earlier.
Good afternoon, everybody. So just a quick note on special education services and some other special populations. We have elected to bring back our students with disabilities all 4 days, whether they are at the elementary school or at the middle high school. The reopening guidance did emphasize that we should prioritize all students with higher needs to provide them with as much in-person instruction as possible. So under the given circumstances, special education services will be provided to the greatest extent possible. The guidance has allowed us some flexibility in some areas. This is continued from the spring. So in terms of duration of services, location, things like that. So it is important to note that your student services might not exactly match what's written on their IEP at this time. So for example, related services at both buildings are advised to push into classrooms as much as possible. And the goal of this is to reduce transitions and to keep students in their cohorts as much as possible. So for example, if your student does have speech services written as a pull-out group, temporarily those services may happen in your student's classroom, again, just so we're following those health and safety guidelines as much as possible. In terms of RTI at the elementary school, we will still continue to provide RTI, or response to intervention. This will also be done as a combination of push in and pull out services, again, to reduce the transitions and to keep students within their cohorts. Because the Regents exams in June and August were canceled, we don't have our typical data set that we would use to provide AIS, or academic intervention services, at the middle high school. However, we will still continue to provide those services based on other factors, other data analysis, and record review. And as was previously stated, we are prioritizing not only our students with disabilities, but some other special populations, some other higher need students. For example, our school within a school student population at the high school is being scheduled to return to school 4 days as well.
Okay, sorry about that. So just for clarification for the public, we're distinguishing some language between remote learning, which all students will receive on the Wednesdays, and a remote learning program, which those students who have requested remote learning only will receive. There's going to be substantive differences or substantive similarities. So the kids will all get the same learning, but the design is going to be considerably different. And we need to know this by this Friday so that we can finalize scheduling at both buildings. So again, the content that students will be learning if they opt for the remote learning program, that's the remote only, will be substantively similar. The standards and expectations will be the same as to that of those kids learning on campus. However, there's going to be considerable differences in the delivery model, and this is determined by scheduling in-house. It's determined by how many students request ultimately, and by how efficiently and effectively we can provide instruction, which, as the principals have indicated, will be provided either by our teachers, either individually by a combination of our teachers, or by a combination of teachers at Questar through BOCES or in surrounding districts that we may need to partner with. For those remote learning only students, the remote learning program kids, the expectation is for K-5 students to be interactive online for 1 to 2 hours daily. That is not the entirety of the work that they will do. It is their online interaction. Assignments will be provided by teachers, and those assignments will have an indication about approximately how long it should take to complete those assignments. But K-5 students should expect to be online every day, 1 to 2 hours a day. Expectations for 6 through 12, because they're older and can sustain a little bit more, they will be on for as much as 4 hours per day, interactive or asynchronous, for online learning. Again, that's not the entirety of the work that will be expected. Assignments will be provided by teachers, and those assignments will have an expected or average amount of time that it takes to complete. Students, not all students learn the same, not all students progress the same, not all students complete the same, so there may be variation, but as a general rule of thumb, those assignments will be indicated, in minutes, 20 or 30 or an hour or what have you. The data we're compiling from students and teachers is helping to determine how we provide this remote learning option. So again, if you have not done so, and now there's 3 ways to indicate, you can either complete that survey. Ms. Dawn Demick may have reached out and had a conversation with you about this, or you can submit the remote learning request form. But that all has to be completed by this Friday. After Friday, you will receive an indication as to how we understand your intent, but we will schedule accordingly because we cannot continue the waiting, or else there's a lot of work to do, folks, let's face it. Okay. I'm going to hand off to Ms. Capazzi in Food Services.
Okay, I'm gonna fill in for Ms. Capazzi today. This is Josh Arcangelo. Breakfast and lunch will be provided in a fashion that ensures appropriate social distancing. As stated by Jody and Tracy, students will be eating breakfast and lunch in their classrooms. All students enrolled will be provided school meals each day, whether they're in school or learning remotely. The process for this is still being developed. Accommodations for students with severe allergies will continue. Students will be supervised during mealtime, and there is no sharing of food and beverages unless they're members of the same household. So this also includes celebrations such as birthdays and holidays. As for transportation, families are required to take the temperature of each of their students and report that data on the EduForm app. Students and staff riding the buses will need to cover their face at all times. Staff with direct contact with students will need to wear gloves. Students who do not have a mask when they board their bus will be given one once they begin to board that bus that they're on. Students will be assigned one seat unless they are students that reside in the same household. If students reside in the same household, they will be assigned to share that seat with the other household residents. Students will be allowed 1 a.m. route and 1 p.m. route for each student riding the school bus. No alternate arrangements can be made, so therefore no bus notes will be allowed. Arrival and dismissal will be managed. There will be staggered start arrival times and staggered dismissal times to allow for appropriate social distancing. Parents, if they can, are encouraged to drive their students to and from school. This will help us reduce the amount of students who are riding our buses. If they do opt to drive their students to and from school, they will still need to submit the health screening on the EDU form app.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Cyril Grant, Superintendent of Buildings and Grounds. Thank you for joining us this afternoon for this important meeting. All staff and students will wear a face covering over their nose, mouth, and chin, except when engaged in instruction, eating, or seated at a desk or table that has been placed an appropriate distance from their peers and staff. And both Jody and Tracy Kent have covered what the classroom setting will look like and the appropriate protective devices, whether it be social distancing or student dividers, that will be provided. Face covering breaks will be built into their daily schedule. As was indicated, if the student is seated at their desk and or behind their divider, they will be able to remove their masks at that time. Families are responsible for taking their child's temperature each morning before going to school. Anyone with a temperature greater than 100.0 degrees Fahrenheit will need to stay home from school as per the Department of Health guidance. Please refer to the health and safety protocols for details. And again, as Dr. Young indicated, those will be on the district website. Students will be trained on proper practices of hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, social distancing, and symptoms of COVID-19. That instruction will take place on the first day of classes when they return to school. Next slide, please. All employees will be screened daily. All persons will maintain 6 foot of social distancing while in school and on school grounds whenever appropriate. And these examples would be common areas such as entrances, exits, lobbies, hallways, classrooms, etc. All persons will adhere to all directional signage or other COVID-19 related materials displayed throughout the school buildings. Visitors will be limited to only those requiring access for school business. Prior approval from the building administrator will be required, so appointments will be needed when you need to come to school. The district will continue to follow CDC and Department of Health guidelines when cleaning, disinfecting all district facilities and buses. Thank you.
Mr. Grant, this might be a good opportunity to inform the community about the masks as well.
Correct. So the district intends to provide, have masks available for students. Again, we understand that parents will opt to provide some of their students their own masks. Again, as was indicated, masks will be required for all students and staff. But the district has worked very diligently to be able to provide students who need them with washable cotton masks And also for a temporary measure, those people coming to the school or riding the bus until they can arrive at school will be given disposable face masks in order to wear during those times. But again, the district will be providing masks in the event that your child does not have one to wear. And these will be washable masks, and they'll be provided an adequate number so that they'll be able to wear a mask while the other is being washed.
Okay, so this is Dr. Young again. We have set up a very specific email address that will address the questions that come in. If you do have a question, you can go to schoolreopening@berlincentral.org. That site will be monitored on a regular basis, and any questions will be then sent to the appropriate department or building administrator or central office administration for an answer. Again, we do want to thank everyone for participating today. We look for a successful opening of the school year in a couple of weeks. If you do have any other questions regarding COVID-19, the plan, contact tracing, or any other information related, we have a website which we showed you earlier. There's the link at the very bottom of the page. And certainly if you just go to our page, the opening website page will have COVID-19. Click on that box and it will take you to all of the resources. I want to thank everybody for participating, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks when school reopens for students on September 10th. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.